Okay, here we are. Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the BlueDragon Special Investigation into the Rust Shooting. My name is Rob de la Espriella, and I'm actually the CEO and founder, creator of the BlueDragon Integrated Problem Solving System. And with me is my friend and associate, Dr. Bill Toth. He's our VP of Research and Development. And today, we'd like to introduce you to the way that we conduct some special investigations into some very difficult subjects. But before I do that, I want to briefly mention that myself, I've been solving complex problems in the nuclear industry for about 30 plus years. And most recently at the Nuclear Weapons Complex and Department of Energy sites. And since Bill joined our team a couple of years ago, we've done some really interesting things. For example, we were asked by the federal government to look into a massive capital asset project that went hundreds of millions over budget and years behind schedule, which requires an in-depth investigation. And from what we found and the results on our BlueDragon charts, the government is actually going to go and recover about $148 million from that contract. In another case, we actually investigated an issue that is of importance to national security. There were emails and transmissions that were getting out of a nuclear weapons facility. And of course, those are being mined by the Russians and the Chinese so that they can attack or find vulnerabilities in our nuclear weapons program. So that's the kind of things that we do, that we've done. But today, we'd like to share our approach for solving these complex human-centered problems in these very difficult working environments with you using our BlueDragon methodology. And we're going to apply it to a topic of current interest, and that would be the shooting on the movie set Rust, which was a tragic incident. But Bill and I started putting this chart together, and it took us just a few hours to really structure it. And we'd like to share with you in these next 25 minutes or so what we've done. But before we do that, I actually would like to talk about a couple of things, just to give you a brief introduction to BlueDragon and what BlueDragon is. For that, I'd like Bill to first introduce yourself, Bill, to our audience here. And then let's talk about what BlueDragon is and what it does.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I have a long history, also retired from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory a couple of years ago now, and I had a background 30 years in security, most recently in nuclear nonproliferation. So flying around the country, flying around the world, looking at complex systems protecting nuclear material and improving those. So I have a background in engineering, and then my PhD is in essentially something that looks at dysfunction in organizations, and I've studied mass killings and other very dark things. So we're really interested in connecting. I was really interested at some point in connecting with Rob and bringing some structure to some of the academic aspects. BlueDragon is a really important and powerful tool for getting at some of the things that we're trying to achieve. And what we're trying to achieve is actually very positive. We're trying to make organizations work or help organizations along a pathway to work better, become more healthful. And when I say healthful, I mean that people there are healthy and safe, which is safety is a big issue that we look at, and secure and also profitable. So, if we get into these organizations and make them and help them to work better, we unlock incredible potential. And on the softer side, which is the management side, we actually have management norms and dysfunction in the way that organizations are managed that are keeping human potential locked up. So we're really in the business of selling hope, and that is hope for better operating organizations, ones that are more profitable and ones that people really enjoy working at, not to mention solidifying their place in a competitive, very competitive world market of ideas and products and such things. So the quote here is mine. We provide solutions that unlock infinite human potential for solving the deepest and most complex problems through employee and management empowerment and engagement. We want to unlock the incredible potential that exists in organizations. So that's our purpose. That's our vision and mission.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Bill. And a little bit more specifically, what is the BlueDragon Integrated Problem Solving System? Well, I want to read this to you and basically not take too much time explaining it. We'd rather show it to you in our BlueDragon chart as we go through the Rust incident. But basically, this is a next generation holistic problem solving framework. It's the most advanced thing in just about any industry. We haven't seen anything that is better than this. And it will help organizations, as Bill was saying, to improve primarily safety and performance, at the same time reducing overhead by solving problems faster and more accurately than just about anything else that we've ever seen. And Bill and I have taken, in our 35 plus years of working in our industries, we've taken just about every problem solving tool and program that there is. What we end up doing is solving problems more accurately, more efficiently, and returning the personnel back to their mission critical tasks, which reduces overhead. Now, we have been vetted and actually incorporated into some of the most technically challenging sites in the world, including the Westinghouse Nuclear Division worldwide, a number of the national laboratories, the majority of the national laboratories, the nuclear weapons complex, Department of Defense installation, and some of the big players out there like Bechtel, Fluor, even a nuclear fuel facilitator and fabricator. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to let you know who we are. And of course, lots more information on our website, BlueDragon1-IPS.com. We'll put that information on the back end. But why don't we jump into the actual, the chart here. Here we go. So this is how we set up a standard BlueDragon chart. And some of you who have taken our course and understand BlueDragon or actually are practicing BlueDragon practitioners, you understand what we're doing here. And BlueDragons are done in 3 phases. And what I'd like to do is give you a sense of how we practice the most important aspect of this, which is critical thinking, bringing in unbiased factual information to populate our chart so we can analyze it, draw up some phenomenal questions for lines of inquiry, and then proceed to the latter phases. So in big picture terms, you see here 3 phases. The gathering, organizing, and analyzing of all the evidence we can gather, and that is critical thinking. And once we have analyzed this information, we generate great questions, focused evidence-based questions that are not biased. And we'll go to phase 2, which is bringing in the subject matter experts from whatever organizations, affected key stakeholders, and we'll ask them those questions. And we'll conduct cause and effect analysis as we go. And doing so, we'll get to the deepest seated causes. And once we have the deepest seated causes identified, we'll go into phase 3, which is working with key stakeholders to develop the best possible solutions. The corrective action plan, the plan that will actually prevent recurrence, because we've done the in-depth work to get to the actual deepest seated causes, not the superficial causes. And just to give you an example of something that we did here for the federal government not too long ago, this is a massive effort that the government usually applies to 50 folks. They assign about 50 personnel, and it takes them about 6 months to do this kind of an effort, and that's them telling us. And what we were able to do is undertake this massive effort that has so many timelines, a massive amount, 200 to 300 records that we reviewed. A lot of them are hyperlinked across the top here. A great degree of data analysis that we have along the right-hand side. These virtual whiteboards are very powerful. They're infinitely expandable, and we actually do business now in a virtual world, which makes it very efficient. We can bring in as many people as we need to on a screen and work collectively as a team. So you see up here the timelines, the defenses, the requirements that apply to this issue. We generated great questions based on the analysis of the defenses and other information on the chart. And then we take those questions, we bring in the subject matter experts, and we work our way through cause and effect until we reach the deepest seated causes. And this is golden. With this particular effort, again, the government was able to identify specific issues that led to the losses of almost 150 million that they're going to go now and recover. And so back to our chart here, I want to let Bill give us a high-level overview of what is actually at play here. What are we actually going to do in terms of big picture from the Blue Dragon standpoint?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So we were interested in just walking through a kind of a fun analysis. I mean, ultimately there was a tragedy on the Rust shooting set, so we're not trying to make light of anything that happened, but just from the standpoint of taking something that's popular in the news and working through a way of thinking about and using critical thinking to sort of inform ourselves about something that happened that wasn't quite so clear in the way that different news outlets were reporting it. So to follow a thread, we first of all, took the timelines as we could see them as reported from a number of different sources. We then and I'll just illustrate one aspect. We said, we found out that the problem was that there was live ammunition in the gun that Alec Baldwin actually used. It discharged. Clearly, he pulled the trigger, or it seems to be that. Evidence indicates that he pulled the trigger, though he's defending himself as saying he didn't at this point. And someone was killed. So the question we had was, what are the safety defenses that are in place to keep these things from happening? How is a live round in his gun to start with? And so we began to pull some threads, and we looked at the relationship with the armor. We also looked at kinds of defenses and things that were set up to keep these things from happening. And we found a lot of interesting sources, and we brought those in. So, a minute about bias in the sources that we used. Yes, every source has some bias. There's no way around that. But we accommodate that bias by looking at as many different sources of information as possible and kind of triangulating towards the truth. What are the common elements? What is there that exists in the narrative that nobody disagrees with? And so we were able to pull those through to come up with as much of a factual timeline as we could. Then we started asking the questions that I just illustrated about the defenses. What are things that should have been in place that failed? And then we looked for additional sources of information that bolstered our understanding of those defenses, like stuff from the actors union that said these are rules that we should use on set. And so it became this really interesting exploration into something that all the information is available to everybody that's an audience to this podcast or this webinar right now. You can go out and find it for yourself. But not everyone is going to do it with intention and then organize it in the way that we're organizing it here. So we did it as something that was a popular subject, not to be made light of because someone died. However, a popular subject that people could relate to, and then just see how we can work through the critical thinking steps to lay it out in a way that we can get down to what we would consider focus areas to look for root cause. Now, again, just to finish my short speech, we in no way are on the legal teams. We don't know what the legal defenses are. And in no way can we pass any kind of judgment on who was at fault. We're not in that game. We're in the game of laying out in a structured and logical way the information that was available so that we can make rational observations about the facts of the case and the timeline of the case and the defenses in place. That's all we're trying to do. And I think we did a good job of it for what it is. But it's only as good as the information that it was used to serve it. So, Rob?
Exactly. And so, just to be clear, if we were doing this for real, we would have factually validated information coming onto the chart. Right now, we're pulling information from the internet. Of course, we're trying to use multiple sources and trying to create a timeline based on available information. When we actually do these for real, we have the true timelines from the actual folks involved, witness statements, things that the organization has agreed are factually correct. And then, of course, the references and the requirements are the latest revision of whatever documents, the flow down from the regulations through the local policies and procedures. What we've done here is show you how we would gather information. For example, I just showed you the Actors Equity Guild and what they consider safety tips for the control of firearms on a movie set. And then there's many other references here that we hyperlinked, and it's easy on these charts, these beautiful virtual whiteboards, to bring in so much information and have it at your fingertips. I wanted to show you the various sections of what we do with the information. The first thing, as you gathered, was to create timelines, and we really create a number of timelines because it gives us a great way to separate out what's going on in different aspects of the scenario. For example, we found out that there were film crew labor issues at the site. And how did those factor in? Did those create an error likely situation? Because what we do is, not only do we do quantitative analysis where we can, and you might remember or consider control charts and other types of quantitative analyses, but the bulk of this, given that it's a human-centric issue, are the qualitative behavioral analyses that need to be done. So we're considering a lot of facets of this issue, and there were film crew labor issues that we've outlined up here. Some of those spilled into the day of the shooting, and as an example, we gathered that there were some crew members that were being walked off the set and replaced by non-union members. They were a disgruntled group of individuals that were told to leave the set. Now, this disgruntled group, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, but of course, in a timeline, this really comes to life. This disgruntled group took prop guns off the set to pass the time. These are the guns that are used in the shooting of the film. And they actually put live rounds in the prop guns to shoot beer cans. This was around 8 in the morning. At noon, they returned the guns back into the whatever area the props are stored, and they left. And somehow, one of these guns was picked up and handed to the actor, Alec Baldwin. And at the very end of the sequence here at 1:42 p.m., he fired a shot, which turned out to be a live round. So this is not a simple case of one person making a mistake. There's a lot more at play that these timelines will show us. So that's just one aspect of it. The handgun controls was really the center point of this investigation. What are the safety protocols for firearms? And you learn some things that there were actually prop guns that have been previously fired unintentionally, a total of 3 times. Those were precursor events. What was done about those precursor events? Anyway, so there's things happening here that shouldn't happen, and there's a lot of other issues and even claims of other accidental discharges on the set. All right, so we start looking at other environmental factors which create error-likely situations like production issues, and there were money issues associated with this production that somehow factored in. We would ask questions about those, and then we stepped back and took a look at the movie culture, the use of guns in the movie set, and we found out there have been at least 43 fatalities since 1990 on movie sets. And so what we do is we collect available information, we get it straight from the sources, we validate it, we create these timelines, and then we have to find out what are the requirements that apply, because we need to compare what happened from the timelines with what should have happened. And the first thing we do is identify the line of defenses that prevent people from getting shot on movie sets. Those are the defenses for this particular activity. If we're looking at a maintenance accident in a nuclear power plant, we look for all of the requirements, the defenses in place to prevent maintenance from going wrong and someone getting injured. And so in this case, we started looking for defenses. And one of the first places you would think we'd look is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And guess what? We really didn't find anything over there on a brief review. That was fascinating. Well, in looking at one of these articles, it is fascinating that there are not a lot of rules from the federal government. If you look at this article from BBC News, what are the rules for weapons safety? And you read this. Oh, let me close this out. Sorry. It states here that there's no definitive regulations for the use of firearms across the film industry. The Federal Workplace Safety Agency doesn't regulate gun safety on this set. It's left up to the states and local policies. That is very interesting. So an activity that can result in death is not being regulated. Now, if you look at the Code of Federal Regulations, we have a lot of regulations for protecting human life. The safety of the public is paramount. So how to build nuclear plants, how to build airplanes, how to build the ships, and so on. There's regulations that are there to protect human life. There's OSHA regulations to prevent us from having accidents. There's so many regulations out there. It's interesting that the ATF doesn't have regulations for preventing people from getting killed by the mishandling of weapons on something like a movie set. So we ended up going deeper and finding the local policies and instructions from the Actors Guild and others, and there are many. And so we start listing the line of defenses. Things like the studio safety department is to be notified prior to any weapon on use on studio property. Never point a firearm at anything you don't intend to shoot. And so you just read the line of defenses from these policies and procedures that are on the set, and don't bring any live ammunition on the set. There's a basic one. You need to be trained if you want to handle firearms on a set. There's all kinds of guidelines for handling firearms on a set, and training of the armorer, and the use of prop guns, and how we take control of these prop guns. And then there's a big one, the Actors Equity Association guidelines. And it says, before you hand it to an actor, make sure it's been test fired and it's empty, or cold as they call it. And so lots and lots of guidelines, including, hey, if we're doing a dramatic shot straight into a camera, let's have different angles so that we don't shoot somebody, just in case. So there's all kinds of precautions that are in play. So what we'll do now is, based on these requirements, we compare it to what actually happened, the timeline, and we start analyzing the effectiveness of this line of defenses, because here's the main point to make here. All of these requirements, this entire line of defenses, and this is just a few that we found, I'm sure there's many more, did not prevent this and many other fatal incidents. So think about that. When you have a serious issue at your site, especially sites in complex operating environments like the ones we work into, the nuclear weapons complex, the Department of Energy, nuclear facilities, and so on, there are hundreds and thousands of requirements, many, many lines of defenses to keep people safe. If something serious happens, all of these defenses failed to keep that individual safe. So we have to analyze them and figure out what happened. And we do that by lines of inquiry questions. So we'll take a look at the evidence, we'll take a look at the line of defense, and we'll ask questions. For example, never point a firearm at anything you don't intend to shoot. So the question is, why did the actor point the gun directly at the director? And we need to understand that behavior. So there's some key behaviors that we're going to analyze here. So this behavioral analysis will lead us directly back to the source of it all. And we're not sure what that's going to be. We can only guess, but you can imagine it has something to do with deep organizational or cultural problems. You might say that the gun handling culture on movie sets is probably seriously deficient, and that might be at the bottom of all this. Because when you start asking all these questions, why was there live ammo on the set? How did the live round end up in the revolver? Are there any circumstances where live ammunition is allowed on the set? So you start answering these questions and you start figuring out where all the gaps in the defenses are, where things went wrong. There are so many things that went wrong here, so many defenses that failed, that we really need to do this kind of in-depth analysis to get to the bottom of it. And this is how it's done. So we do the analysis of our defenses by comparing these requirements to the evidence of what happened. And we're as factual, as neutral, as unbiased as possible while we're doing it all. Bill, would you like to say a couple things about bias and how we go out of our way to prevent or minimize bias from entering into our analysis?
I think real simply that we have to account for it. We have to understand what it is and what it might mean to our analysis. So if we have sources that have a particular political agenda, it doesn't mean that they're completely without factual content, but we have to understand what that agenda is, and then go find another source with a different or an opposite agenda and see if they have facts that coincide with what the first one is. We can't, in this strange world that we live in, we can't combat the fact that some people try to make up things and we just have to be good investigators to determine what those things might be. But we can find kernels of truth from multiple perspectives. So that's that. I also want to say one more thing about defense in depth, and this is one where we could focus on something called the near miss. So if Alec Baldwin would have pulled the trigger and was abiding by the suggestion by the actors union that Rob just showed, then the bullet would have passed harmlessly to the right or to the left of the person who ultimately got killed, and we may never have heard about the story at all. So we are dealing with multiple defenses, and when they all break down and allow that bad thing to sneak its way through and cause terrible harm, then we're in the problem of trying to, go find out what went wrong, and we come up with this stuff. What about ahead of time when we look at our defenses from the perspective of what could possibly go wrong, and then look at all the defenses that we have in place and keep them as full of integrity as they possibly can be, so that one of those things can catch the bad thing from happening. So that's what our job is to learn from near misses, first of all, because if the near miss happens and then we discard it and say, oh, well, that wasn't a thing, then we're missing an opportunity to actually learn something about our system. If we take that near miss and say, which defense failed, because one obviously succeeded, we didn't have a death. So which defenses failed, and then go back and shore up all the defenses, then we're in an organizational setting where we're learning and we're getting safer as opposed to getting less safe. So we're as interested in the near misses as we are in the ones that cause catastrophic harm. So.
Oh, fantastic, Bill. Thanks. And I'm going to throw up this slide here on the bow tie model for risk assessment. And if you notice here, prominently on the left side, where we have all kinds of hazards and threats to our working environment, you see there in green a very strong set of defenses, what we think are a strong line of defenses. And they include regulations from the Code of Federal Regulations, so all the way from the laws down to the implementing programs, policies, and procedures. And then we also have physical barriers to keep us safe. And nuclear, we think in terms of lead shielding, for example. And we have cyber barriers to protect our information, like our top secret information coming out of the nuclear weapons program. So we have all kinds of defenses in place to keep us from having events. But of course, some cause and effect sequences will get through these defenses and cause usually minor events, and then occasionally a big event. So if we can understand from the precursor events, the minor and moderate events, what's really going on, doing this in-depth analysis, we can shore up and strengthen those defenses before they result in a bigger problem. And that's exactly what we do. We proactively try to identify what's going on, the deepest seated causes of your problems, and strengthen those defenses to eliminate those problems. Otherwise, folks are living on the right side of the equation, which is the events happen and now you're in mitigation. Now you're reactive. You're simply trying to mitigate the consequences and take corrective actions on the back end. But that's after the event has happened. You can only hope that the final impact is not as big as it might be. But you can also learn from that end of it, doing, again, in-depth analysis, what actually caused it. We don't do a good job on either side, by the way. Typically, organizations do not do a good job of in-depth enough analysis. And if you heard me speak in the past, or of course, if you've gone through any of our BlueDragon training programs, you know that across all industries in the United States alone, the losses, the annual recurring losses due to not solving problems is in the trillions of dollars. In the healthcare system alone, it's averaging over $850 billion a year in losses. And in the IT world, if you look at the CISQ reports that come out every year, it's averaging over $2 trillion in losses per year due to poor software quality. So these are staggering numbers, but if you add up all the other industries, we're in the trillions of dollars a year in recurring losses because these industries are not doing in-depth enough analysis to really solve their problems and really stop recurring. That's why, as Bill mentioned at the onset, we're not just in the business of finding what specific troubles ail you, one specific problem. we're in the business of creating hope and creating a whole new dynamic in your organization that actually empowers you to be just a strong problem-solving organization. And the foundation for all of this is critical thinking. One of those soft skills that is very much desired in all industries, and mainstream academia is not really helping us much there. Back to our board here, once we've done this massive phase one, critical thinking, gather as much information and evidence as you can, organize it into timelines, line of defenses, analyze all of our defenses and all of the other evidence we brought in so we can develop the best possible questions. That takes a lot of time, the bulk of our time. And as Einstein said, hey, if I had an hour to live and I had an hour to solve the problem, I would spend 55 minutes developing the best possible questions. And then the problem would shake out in the last 5 minutes. So that's what phase one is all about. And now that we have the best possible questions regarding every single symptom and irregularity that we uncovered in phase one, now we sort of group them under different themes or subsystems. And we'll talk about the human factors and at-risk behaviors type of questions, behaviors about setting people up to fail, error-likely situations, we call those, from a working environment. How were the actors set up to fail? How was Alec Baldwin set up to fail? How about just standard programmatic questions about the regulations and the requirements and how they're implemented? The equipment interfaces, how the handguns in this case were being managed, and then management and oversight. What is the oversight at a facility like this? Who's responsible for the safety of the actors handling the weapons? And is it just the armorer, or are there more safety officers involved? So we take a look at these themes, if you will, and attack the problem from so many different angles that we're able to very effectively triangulate down to the real, true, deepest-seated causes of what's going on. And it's usually much more complex than people think. In these environments, it is a group of deep-seated causes that band together to create the environment and the cause and effect sequences that end up bypassing all of the defenses that are put in place. And that's what's happened here, of course. Bill, anything to add?
Yeah, if you go back to the bow tie chart just for a second, just to reiterate one really important point, Blue Dragon has a long history of living in that right-hand side. And the right-hand side is not a happy place. This is a place of death and loss and accident and these sorts of things. We would rather live in that left-hand side where this is potential, and it's very hard to measure the impact of the accident that never happened. But we have enough experience out in the world to know that the value of the accident that didn't happen is immeasurable in terms of life and cost and productivity. So we love to live in that left-hand space where we're talking about hope and we can move forward into a better organizational circumstance that prevents bad things from happening, and we just stay out of the right-hand side. We can be in the right-hand side and really help you learn from terrible lessons over there also, but we prefer to be in the left-hand side before the bad things happen. That's right. So that's a much happier and hopeful place. So
very well put. And of course, because our process is so scalable, we can do rapid 1 to 2 hour investigations of your minor issues, put those trend codes into your system so we can analyze trend and identify negative trends early enough to do a deep dive and spot those deep-seated issues before a big event ever takes place. So if you don't have a strong trending and analysis program at your sites, come talk to us and we'll help you set something up. Now, let me go back to the efficiency. We've talked about the accuracy. We're doing these deep dives and deep investigations in this virtual environment incredibly efficiently. And so it took Bill and I about 2 hours to put this much information on the chart. And it took us maybe another hour to develop the questions, actually less than that, to develop the questions that jump out at you based on looking at the evidence. So if we actually had the support of the organization who's conducting the investigation, we will be able to get here very quickly. The long lead times are figuring out what the defenses are and getting witness statements and all of the possible information that we need to populate the chart. And once it's on here, the analysis goes very quickly. The the questions with the subject matter experts. That depends on the level of support. But we will need to talk to the different levels of the groups that were involved, the key stakeholders. And so we'll talk to the workers who are on the set, the actors, the folks providing oversight, the management teams, and any other stakeholders that have a hand in this production. So that's how we work, and we layer all of their answers, and we go as deep as we can with cause and effect analysis and identify what's really going on here. Now, we can do this in a matter of weeks. Right now, these investigations can take over a year. And so when you talk about special prosecutors and special investigators, Bill and I are BlueDragon Special Investigators. And we're doing things, and we can do these things with the BlueDragon integrated problem-solving system that would take you and other organizations many, many months, and in some cases, over a year. The Rust investigation, correct me if I'm wrong, took 15, 16 months to get to the point where they told Alec Baldwin that he was being charged with involuntary manslaughter. And so it would not take us 15 months. It might take us 2 to get to this point, because we would clearly show these are the requirements, these are the laws, this is what was violated. And certainly this would be a very useful chart for any investigation. Very good. Bill, last minute thoughts as we wrap up here.
No, I think we've said a lot, and it was an interesting exercise, and I would encourage people to check it out. So,
fantastic. Well, let me wrap up here. If you'd like any more information regarding the BlueDragon IPS, please give us a call. And of course, we'll be happy to support your efforts. There's a lot more information on our website. We welcome you to come over here and visit our new website. And we're planning on doing more of these. So stay tuned, and we'll hope to see you in future installments of the BlueDragon Special Investigations. Let me take a look here at the chat, and thank you, Lorena, for joining us, and thank you for your comment. I'm glad you found it insightful. And Charity, thanks a lot. Appreciate you. And Colonel Black, thanks for being here with us. Appreciate your support. If you have any questions, feel free. Thank you very much, Scott English. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. And we'll hang out for just a few more minutes in case someone has a question for us.
Criticisms and challenges are welcome as well. That's how we get better.
Yes, of course.
Sounds like everybody was positive. I can't see the chat, so.
And by the way, you can always shoot us an email. The information was posted. We're also going to make this video available on our YouTube training channel. And so we're posting our webinars and other BlueDragon training in our BlueDragon training channel, which is how you access this one. So Lorena Williams, thank you very much. And we love suggestions. And so I'll be happy to see your email about another case we should look into. Someone already suggested the Southwest Airlines debacle over the holidays with all the cancellations and delays. And so there we might go look for federal aviation regulations, line those up, get timelines and evidence from the internet, line those up in timelines, and see if we couldn't come up with some great questions to investigate that sort of an issue. Another one is the blackouts and brownouts in Texas and California. Again, in the heavy winter season, we have folks losing power, and they're simply not able to solve these issues or get to the bottom of them, so they actually have a clear understanding. Very good. Thank you, everybody. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Again, if you'd like to follow up, you know how to reach us. That's been it. On behalf of Bill Toth here and myself, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next installment of BlueDragon Special Investigations. Take care.